Hi there. This video is made to help the distance learner understand the importance of transactional distance in online learning. I'm Scott Hansen and will explain in this video the importance of understanding the roles of the course content, the teacher, and student in a distance learning environment. This is especially needed in times of required remote learning environments due to sickness, travel, or other reasons a student or teacher is unable to conduct class in a face-to-face environment. The transactional distance theory was created by Professor Michael Graham Moore in the early 1970s. His theory was built from a constructivist basis and argues how structure and dialogue in a learning transaction creates a distance requiring a level of student autonomy. This is important for distance learners to understand as what is their role in this thing we call learning. Before we get into these areas, we must first discuss the term transaction. What is a transaction? Is it a conversion of something, such as a pile of cash into a credit card or vice versa? Is it an agreement between two people concluding with a simple handshake? In the concept of transactional distance, the transaction includes the content, the teacher, the students, and resulting in this new knowledge, the whole purpose of taking a course. So in other words, taking all the words from those books as directed by the teacher, discussing it with fellow students or discussing it, interacting with the content directly, and coming to a conclusion about new thoughts, thus making new knowledge. Sounds fairly straightforward, right? So now that we know what is meant by a transaction, let's move to the first axis of the model, called structure. From a distance, you can have a very high structure, such as a rigid chain of command, showing somebody at the top. They have managers working for them, very structured, very orderly. Where you could have another high structure, such as a very tall, sturdy building made of strong steel and brick. Both of these types are very immobile. They direct certain things to flow a certain way. Or you may have structure that is so loose, it is like a ribbon twisting and turning to near infinity. Very difficult to see which way to go. Do you go up? Do you go down? Do you go left? Do you go right? The amount of the structure provided in a class by design helps to inform how much student autonomy will be needed in this class. On the other axis of the model is dialogue. Dialogue can be a discussion between a teacher and a student. It can be discussions between students, or it could just be a whole bunch of loud noise yelling at each other and nobody's really hearing anything. The dialogue, like the structure, helps to inform how much student autonomy will be required to achieve the learning outcomes of a given course. Now that we have covered both structure and dialogue, let's talk about the transactional distance resulting from the interaction of the two. Distance is not simply a portion between 2 points. Distance includes the complexities between the course content, the teacher, and the students, as discussed earlier. For example, with low structure, think of the free-flowing creative course with a lower amount of dialogue. The distance will increase, requiring much more ownership by the student. But if you look at that same structure that is very creative, very low structure, but yet there's a high amount of dialogue, now all of a sudden you have an understanding of what needs to be done, what's being learned, what really is expected, a much lower amount of required learner autonomy. So the final part of this video brings the distance to the outcome of learner autonomy, which is how much is the student really responsible for. Sure, the students in higher education are responsible for their own learning, but we would be kidding if we say every class is equally interesting or of equal personal importance. Having a good understanding of just how responsible one has and how much responsibility one has in a class is really good to know from the onset. The distance described earlier drives the autonomy required by the student. So there you have it. As a distance learning student, such as in an online course, a student needs to understand there will be a transaction of sorts. In this transaction, there will be a level of structure established, a level of dialogue required and executed resulting in a distance between some content, some student, a teacher, and that will result in some new knowledge being made. Thank you again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video and it helps you in your future classes.